What's good everyone, I'm Zayas and today I'm here to review Kiichi by Hideki Arai. If you want some more context as to who Arai is or what he's done, you can click on the link to the video up here where I've already gone over it. Ended up being my most popular video so far, but I won't really talk about context as to who he is right now. And Kiichi really isn't a big deviation from The World Is Mine. The two are actually quite similar, with the over-the-top social commentary, the dense, gritty, somewhat intentionally ugly art style that both of these series have, and these characters who are propped up as leaders despite being severely underqualified. What I really view Kiichi as is a refinement and a polishing over The World Is Mine. There's less of the pacing issues which hurt The World Is Mine, there's less of these vague, random themes which were sort of thrown in, and there's more of just general excitement. Let's start with the story of Kiichi, which was thoroughly entertaining from head to toe. We follow the life of this kid named Kiichi as he grows up, who even as a toddler has a strong sense of virtue and morals as to what's right and wrong. His strong personality leads into him getting into conflicts at school, at home, and his story is very well crafted, and all these developments make you want to see what kind of person he is and what kind of person he's going to become. The story is very much character focused, and it's not afraid to throw in these dramatic twists and turns which are often quite exciting, like when Kiichi's parents die and Kiichi has to be raised by homeless people temporarily, or like when Kiichi exposes the government for all this widespread corruption. These twists and turns are often handled pretty delicately, as I think they should be, because they do get into some sensitive material, and they only ever really serve to make the story more exciting. The story is very emotionally charged, it's also quite grand and boisterous, which I think are good qualities, and on top of that there's so many unexpected developments that create tons of tension, and it's a great story. There's never really a dull moment, a lackluster arc. The story is very go, go, go for the 87 chapters that it exists, but I do think that sometimes it's a little overly dramatic, which I'll get into later. The artwork is something which could foster complaints from some people, but I quite like the intentionally ugly nature of it. This manga isn't depicting flowers and roses, it's depicting prostitutes and gamblers, sometimes even at their worst moments. It's gritty, similar to The World Is Mine, and initially these dense, overcrowded panels really give the feel of this bustling, overcrowded city, and later on there's even this light gray shading which appears a lot, which can make it feel gloomy and dreary. The art of Kiichi is quite versatile, and we can go from darker, sadder panels to panels of Kiichi filled with vigor and energy. The immense attention to detail in the backgrounds was much appreciated as well. There was tons of things you wouldn't even really stop to consider, like the streetlights, the furniture, the food, and many other things. To me, these were masterfully done. And on top of that, there's also emotions which were conveyed super well in Kiichi as well. There's these tense, explosive action scenes where you can feel the tension in the air. Emotions like anger, sadness, loss, shame, you name it, you can feel it during this work. Characters, another strong point of this work, and the main one is Kiichi himself. Kiichi is a strange kid. He's manly, honorable, virile, passionate, even as a small child. His brazen, hard-headed attitude really drew me into his character, and his confidence helped as well. His character does share similarities with Mon from The World Is Mine, as they're both these relatively naive characters who are made by others to be these grand characters that people look up to. A lot of Kiichi's actions were taught to him by others, such as never trying to tell a lie, saying that he wants to be alone on TV, or stuff like fishing or gambling, all taught actions, but other people can't comprehend this. They think Kiichi is incomprehensible, and a lot of the times they kind of view him as some sort of messiah. Kiichi's character arc happens quick, as he goes from this kid who doesn't fit in to an orphan, and the grief and sadness that he feels about reoccurring losses in his life is often quite powerful, like I said before. He's quickly exposed to a world full of violence, sex, drugs, homelessness, and unlike you would expect a normal child to, he actually learns a couple good things while he's there. Of course, it wasn't all good. There was a ton of danger there, like the shooting which happened, which gave him even more trauma than he previously had. As he ages, he keeps a lot of his core personality traits, but he sort of realizes how powerless and helpless he is to even just help one of his classmates in need. This is where Kiichi gets a little more abstract, as Kiichi is not only just a character, but sort of a representation of a person who is willing to make changes and willing to do what is needed in order to do what is right. The series is very obviously critical of stuff like corruption, but it's also very critical of people who are silent and don't try to make a change even though they know that a change is needed. And I sort of tend to agree with Arai that complacency is almost as bad as being corrupt. This might even be a dig at Japanese culture on a whole, because a lot of people are okay with remaining silent on important topics, but I don't know what Arai was thinking, and that's just my guess. Kiichi overall is a wonderful character. He represents a lot of different things, and I loved his characterization throughout this manga. Other characters in Kiichi were great too. None of them were as central to the themes of the work as Kiichi, but there were characters like his parents, who, despite not being around that long, were incredibly likable. The homeless people that Kiichi came across who tried to raise him were obviously untrustworthy and unfit to raise children, but at the same time, they came off as very human and like they were trying their best the whole time. Characters like Kiichi's grandparents did take a little bit longer to develop, and a lot of times they were just there as plot devices, but eventually they did develop in the end. The last two major players are Kai and Masato. Kai is sort of a much needed foil to Kiichi. He is somebody who is quite intelligent and knows the ways of the world, but isn't really able to make a change until Kiichi sort of comes along and pushes him. His story arc of his father being in this scheme that he was setting out to unravel is quite shocking. It's very sad, and overall I liked his character on the whole. Misato had a tragic backstory, and she had to be handled the most delicately out of all the characters, as she was basically the victim of this whole trafficking incident, which I don't even know if I'm allowed to say exactly what happened on YouTube, but I think it was handled delicately enough. She was subject to tons of trauma, which resulted in her hurting animals, drawing strange images, and not being able to properly form bonds with others. This leads into her eventually believing that Kiichi is some sort of savior and he's going to save her from all of this, which is obviously not true, but she clings onto some sort of hope. All these characters are quite nuanced, they're often very complex, and their struggles are very gripping, so I really have no complaints about the characters in Kiichi. When it comes to downsides in Kiichi, there is some. I wouldn't say there's a ton, but there is some. I think the story of Kiichi can really get crazy at times. Kiichi going from this kid who just was fishing and gambling on horses to this guy who takes down hundreds of politicians in this massive crazy scandal is kind of the equivalent to this god bear in The World Is Mine sort of showing up out of nowhere, just destroying a bunch of stuff and then leaving. In the same line of thought, this work can be a little too Kiichi-centric at times, where there's too much focus placed on Kiichi, which hurts immersion because you just see all these characters glazing the hell out of Kiichi for like 2 chapters straight. On top of that, it can also be a little dialogue heavy, especially when characters are praising Kiichi, and the problem isn't that it's too dialogue heavy, but the problem is the dialogue is about nothing except how great Kiichi is. The last negative thing I'll say is that the story does feel a little self-indulgent when it has this whole grand storyline at the end about ending corruption, stopping all these negative things, but it doesn't really offer up a solution. Unless you say that the solution they're offering up is dictatorships, which I really hope that's not what he's trying to say, because everybody knows dictatorships end horribly. The other 2 solutions offered up was sensationalism and vigilantism, both of which I don't think are good ideas, especially not vigilantism. And I think it's fine to say that there is a problem that needs to be fixed and not have the answer. But I think in Kiichi's case, it comes off as if it has all the answers, and it can come off a little bit arrogant at times. But to tell you the truth, it's really satisfying to see these scumbags get what they deserve, and Kiichi does a really good job at making you feel angry or making you feel disgusted towards these people. And you could say Kiichi was providing commentary on things like trafficking is bad, or, you know, what they did to children was bad. I think everybody could easily agree on that even before reading the work. so it's not like he's making a massive statement or anything. But I think it was also a little bit of a commentary on what people find entertaining. This whole thing was sort of chocked full of sex and violence the entire way through, and I think that's entertaining, and I think that's what really sells. Lastly, I just want to note that the similarity this work has to Catch a Predator, or nowadays there's like cheap YouTube channels like Vitaly kind of like doing this stuff where they expose these people. Sometimes it's fake anyways, but it's just funny because these two released around the same time. So I don't know what happened, like which one was inspired by which, but the similarities between these two pieces of media is kind of funny because they are so different, but they do share a lot of similarities. Overall, I think Kiichi is a very compact, emotional read which weaves in social commentary. I think the condensed writing style makes it more consistently exciting than The World Is Mine. I'm feeling a light 9. Thank you everyone for watching. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment, anything to do with manga recommendations, what you want me to review. I check basically all the comments. Yeah, I didn't upload for a while. This one's been 3 weeks or something, and it was mostly because I've been sick. So I was like pretty sick for a week and a half, and I basically couldn't do much. But now I'm feeling better, so I'll see if the uploads can be a little more consistent. Next up, I kind of want to do Beat the Vandal Buster. Just personally was a work that I read as a kid and now I resumed, but I could do anything, honestly. I kind of also wanted to do Nikaido Hell Golf because one of my viewers recommended it and I've been enjoying it. So yeah,